Welcome everyone to the sixth in this series of Toastmasters Unplugged streaming events. We're available on both YouTube and LinkedIn. And for those who require closed captions or what we call subtitles sometimes, please tune in on LinkedIn for this facility. Please send in your comments and your questions via these platforms, and we'll try our best to get to your questions. And if you're letting us know where you are, and if you're a member of a Toastmasters club, please give us the name of your Toastmasters club and your location. This evening, we celebrate Toastmasters, a place for everyone. And my name is Gillian Geraghty. I've been a member of Lucan Toastmasters since 2016. And I was so delighted when I was approached to host this event. And I am indeed delighted to be hosting this evening. Welcome to what I know will be an illuminating and an inspiring conversation between a great panel of Toastmasters who all have a different take on the meaning of a place for everyone. We'll drill down into what attracts a diverse community together in our Toastmasters clubs, the different goals, many intended and indeed perhaps accidentally or coincidentally discovered goals and opportunities that members have found through their Toastmasters journeys. These may have led to roles both inside and outside Toastmasters. And we'd also discuss how Toastmasters helps us to expand our outlook in terms of how to truly welcome all into our clubs and accommodate those with additional needs in order to contribute or simply to feel welcome. One thing I adore about my Toastmasters club, which is Lucan in County Dublin, is the variety of members, most of whom I would never have crossed paths with. They work in different fields, are not part of the same social circle, or at least until I found them at Toastmasters. We have a vibrant club in Lucan, County Dublin, which includes members from almost every decade of adulthood, including octogenarians and young members who, I'm not 100% sure that they're in their 20s, but they look pretty young to me. You have members working on their masters or their PhDs, still in college. And then you have retired members who have a completely different outlook on Toastmasters, some of whom have been members for decades. I'm only a beginner with my mere 8 years under my belt in comparison with some of our members. The expansion of my circle, which is down to Toastmasters really, has expanded to other clubs, areas, divisions, and even districts, having attended online meetings in both Minnesota and Montreal. And this evening, we have a cross-district panel, perhaps not as far afield as there. We did try to stay within the time zone. So we do have panelists here this evening from both District 71 and District 91, from Irish-based clubs and clubs in the Greater London area. I'm really excited to introduce our panelists this evening. So I'll ask Olga if she could bring to the stage our 4 panelists to take their bows. I can't resist saying roll it there, Colette. The Irish viewers of a certain age will recognize the reference. So roll it there, Olga. And I see, Olga, we have everybody up on the stage. Our panelists this evening include Dan McGill, who is a member of Croydon Communicators, Society Speakers in District 91, and a club in California called 797 Saturday Morning Speakers. So it's no surprise, perhaps, with his international outlook, and in spite of us trying to stick with the same time zone, that Dan is actually calling in from Mexico City this evening. So it's not quite evening for him yet. You may recognize Dan as a mainstay of the speech contest circuit. Dan is a UX writer and communications consultant who works with many well-known organizations such as Apple, Netflix, British Airways, Microsoft, and Vodafone. helping to shape their business communications. Not only is Dan's list of clients very impressive, Dan has an impressive record in the speech contest arena, reaching the humorous speech finals 4 times, and also reaching the semi-final at not one, but 2 international speech contests. I look forward to finding out more about all of that and more when we speak shortly. Now, our next panelist is James Finnegan, a great man for leadership within Toastmasters. I first met James on the organising committee for the District 71 conference in Liverpool in 2023. I know that James has held multiple committee roles within his own club in Tralee and has also served as area director and division director. His efforts for Toastmasters was recognised in 2021 when he was named D71 VPPR of the Year, and in 2024 when he was awarded the District Above and Beyond title. I look forward to speaking with James about leadership inside and outside of Toastmasters as we delve into his wearing of many hats, including TEDx Tralee, a radio career, and other community and promotional roles that James pursues. Following my chat with James, we will welcome Lydia McDowell, a member of Speakers of Croydon in District 91. When I contacted Lydia ahead of this panel discussion, I was delighted to learn that not only was she in a Toastmasters club in Croydon, where I spent a summer working in another lifetime, a long time ago, she also lives in the same suburb that my cousins grew up in, and I was familiar with the area from my childhood and my early adulthood. So 2 complete strangers find a connection and a point of reference we both relate to, and communication flows from there. As Toastmasters, we engage and find a connection, and that's quite beautiful. Imagine my surprise when speaking with Dan, I discovered another Croydon club involved this evening. Lydia has in recent years set up her own coaching business with a focus on women and young people, and I look forward to learning how the sense of community and energy in Toastmasters may have influenced her decision to open her own business. Last, but certainly not least, we have Rob Partridge, or should I say Dr. Rob Partridge, who is a must-have here for this conversation about a place for everyone. Rob is a member of East Galway Speakers and Pride Toastmasters, and he is an advocate for inclusivity for those with intellectual and physical disabilities, with whom he also worked in his professional career, and indeed also for the LGBTQ community. I'm looking forward to an informative discussion with Rob about how Toastmasters in general, and more particularly our individual clubs, can endeavour to include and welcome all, and the decision-making process that committees can imbue inclusivity in their club policy to ensure this happens year after year. We'll see you all again very soon. So Olga, could you bring our panelists back to the green room, please? Great, thank you. And speaking of Olga, I cannot conclude my round of introductions without acknowledging and thanking our technical facilitator and the organizer of these fantastic unplugged events. Olga hails from Fingal Toastmasters, a club that punches way above its weight in terms of providing Toastmasters with great leaders and facilitators. Olga can count the following as current fellow members of that club. No other than past international president, Mr. Ted Corcoran, and also Brenda Lannon, one of our recent past district directors in District 71. I would like to thank Olga for thinking of me and for inviting me to host this evening, and for all the hard work that has gone into preparing for this session and all of the panel discussions. It's down to Olga that we are going to be live on both YouTube and LinkedIn. Again, for those who require subtitles or closed captions, please tune into the LinkedIn feed rather than the YouTube. Please send in your comments and your questions via those platforms, and we will try to answer any questions that you have. We would love to know where you're viewing from. So please let us know that as well. So from the 24th of March, 1905, in the Bloomington YMCA, where a young Dr. Ralph Smedley introduced a dinner meeting club to train young boys and men in speech, to face an audience and to express their thoughts, through to the first official club in 1924, which we are celebrating the centenary of now in 2024, which was set up in Santa Ana, California. Toastmasters has been growing and evolving. Now, of course, it did take until the 1970s before officially women were allowed to join. So perhaps it was growing in the early decades, but has certainly been evolving ever since. We can certainly say that as a community, the members have often been ahead of the official line, as it was in the 70s when it came to women members. Now, tonight, I'd like to first invite up to the stage the first of our 4 Toastmasters, Dan McGill. So Olga, if you'd like to invite Dan. Thank you. Hello, Dan. Welcome, Dan.
Hello, Gillian. Thank you. Nice to be here.
Great. And thank you for agreeing to be part of this evening's discussion. Let's start with an easy one. Tell us a little bit about when you joined Toastmasters and what drew you to become a member.
Yeah, I joined in 2017. I'd never spoken in public before. I never enjoyed it. It was something I always stayed well away from at work, and I was afraid of it. I think most people, when they come to Toastmasters, whatever the percentage is, it's a huge percentage of people that come because they're very, very nervous about public speaking, and that was me. But I think I was maybe a bit different in that I didn't even come along to Toastmasters to try and get over that fear. Not at all. I was at a loose end one night, and I saw kind of on the Meetup app that there was a few different choices of things I could go and do. One of them that night happened to be, they're both in London. One of them was to go and learn to dance the tango, and the other one was to go and see some people giving speeches. And I thought, oh, well, I'm probably less of a dancer, more of an audience member, so I think I'll go for that. I didn't know anything about Toastmasters. I didn't really know it was a place that people went to improve their speaking. I just thought it was a place where people would be giving speeches and I'd get to enjoy them. So I went along, I watched some speeches. They were fantastic. I really enjoyed them. And as I've now learned, obviously always happens during the break, I got asked if I was interested in giving a topic, and I said yes, and then found out what it was and thought, okay, I'll just leave during the break. But somehow or other, throughout my life, I would have left, and I did leave these situations, but somehow I didn't, and I stayed, and I got up and I gave the topic, and I was terrified, but it went well, and I won. And again, I've since realized that the new guests always win, but I didn't know that at the time. So I thought, oh, maybe I could be good at this. So I joined. I went back the next week, and that's how it started. But I went along just to watch some speeches. Literally was, and if I'd taken a different decision that night, I could be a really bad tango dancer now. Who knows?
That's fantastic, Dan. I see Shay Gay is saying well done for staying. And we have a hello from Elizabeth Jordan in Hertfordshire. So it's lovely to see that you're watching, Elizabeth. Now, Dan, that's amazing, really, when you consider what you've gone on to achieve in Toastmasters, particularly in speech contests. So from somebody who was nervous about public speaking, one of my questions was going to be to you whether you were aware of speech contests when you first came to Toastmasters, but by the sounds of it, you were not. But you've gone on to do incredibly well in both humorous and the international speech contest. So although it wasn't a driving force in encouraging you to join up, would you say it's a driving force in keeping you in Toastmasters? Does it keep you engaged and interested?
Yeah, it was kind of a driving force when I joined. In that the president, as presidents do, drove me to the cash machine to collect my membership money on that night. But that very first night when I decided, okay, I've done that table topic. Actually, that's the first kind of even tiny bit of headway I've made with my public speaking in my life. And I thought, I want to come back here. I want to come back. And I spoke to the president. I'm joking, obviously. He walked me to the cash machine. and we were speaking on the way, and I was saying, I did tonight. I was so nervous, but I don't want to kind of leave a big gap now to doing it again. So can I come back next week? Can I join, and can I give my icebreaker speech? And I remember he said to me, well, you could normally, but next week is our humorous speech contest, so it will be a bit different. But if you join and you want to enter the contest, you can do that. And in that moment, it didn't matter to me whether it was a contest. I think if I'd waited longer, I think if I joined at a different time, contests might seem a bit more daunting to me. But in that moment, everything was daunting, and I just wanted to speak. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll just make my icebreaker slightly more humorous than maybe I would have done, and I'll enter the contest. And so my first ever speech at Toastmasters was in a humorous speech contest. There was only 3 of us. There was me, the president, and another chap called Dan. And the president gave a brilliant humorous speech. It would win every time, except he did it in 12 to 14 minutes, which was about 6 minutes over the time. So he was disqualified. And that just left me and another chap named Dan. And the other chap named Dan was much better than me, obviously. But judges aren't good with the same name on the score sheet. So somehow, my first ever humorous contest, I won, and I went home that night just on top of the world, and thinking, oh wow, I'm a stand-up comedian. I've won a humorous contest at a club event in Croydon, where I'm basically one step away from being famous. And then I went to the area contest the following week, and there were 6 of us. I think I finished 7th. It was a disaster. But right from the very start there, I got contests. I'd won my first contest, and I was really motivated to, enter again the following year. And when we got to the international, to see if I could get further than that area level. And I think, speaking about Toastmasters being a place for all and an opportunity for all, I think that contest kind of encapsulates that ability to. When I agreed to do my humorous speech, and I had a week in between, I'd actually gone off to France. It was the August that year, and I'd gone off to France, and I was doing some research around speeches and contest speeches, and I remember seeing the world finalist the world champion had just been crowned in wherever it was that year in 2017 of Toastmasters. I remember watching that speech and thinking, wow, that's incredible, and it's so far away. But then realizing that actually there was a path, like there's a way. It's not like I was an aspiring footballer and I could say, well, I'm too old now, or the amount of people that get there are so small. There was a path to go from where I was, not even having given my icebreaker speech, to being on a world stage. And it was kind of a clear path and a path that had possibility. So I think that is one of the great things about contests. There is that route there, and it's unlikely it happens, but it's unlikely you're going to do it in the first attempt. But there are always those chances to keep coming back and keep improving. And so that's why I'm doing the contest today. Very long answer, sorry, but it keeps me going because there is always that kind of.
And it is a step-by-step approach. But having said that, I think you're being a little bit too modest there, because you can count yourself among the very few people who've gotten to stand on the stage at the semi-finals of the World Speaking Championship. And also, you've done it twice, in 2022 and 2024, if I'm correct. And am I right in saying also that in 2022 you would have been competing online, whereas in 2024 it was in person?
The semi-finals were both in person, so Nashville in 2022.
Oh, they were, okay.
This year, but the whole contest had been online up until the finals in 2022.
That's
so
right.
that kind of made it a little trickier. But
Yes, yeah, and I mean, you can count yourself in a very small club, I think, of somebody who's gotten to stand on that stage twice, which is really amazing journey. Now, you're also a member of 3 clubs. Could you share with us how the Toastmasters experience varies, if it does, between the 3 clubs?
I think all Toastmaster clubs are the same and different, aren't they? I think we all tend to follow that same structure of a meeting. but mostly, I suppose the cultures within the club can be quite different. So I'm a member of 2 clubs in London. One of them is Society Speakers, is very central London, right in the middle, right at King's Cross. And because of that, because London can be quite fluid and people can, be in London one week and not there the next, we find in that club we have lots of guests who might turn up for 1 or 2 meetings, and then because they're only in London for a short time, they'll disappear somewhere else, or even members who will be around for 6 months or so and then they go somewhere else. And so that club is very fluid and kind of feels a little more energetic and vibrant than others. Just with that turnover of membership, it does keep things very interesting. My Croydon club is just outside London. I think the membership is a bit more stable there, and maybe we have a good amount of guests, but probably not as many as in central London, and that gives a slightly different feeling. And certainly I've built my closest friendships in Toastmasters at that club because people stay around for a long time. And then I'm a member of a club in California, which I love, and I visited a lot because I tend to go to California every so often. So I visited this club a lot, and then when they went online during COVID, I got to join, which was lovely as well. But what I love about that club is it's people who've been there forever, like for 40, 50, however many years, and that's really nice. It's nice for me, I think, to kind of go in and maybe go 1 week. And now that they're back in person, I might only get to go 2 or 3 times a year. I still love being a member. And just knowing that these people will be there, these faces will be there. And there's so much experience and guidance. And the clubs are different. They operate their meetings in the same way, but the people, I suppose, is what makes it different.
The people is what makes them different. Listen, Dan, thank you so much for your contribution. We'll be seeing you again a little bit later when we have a group discussion. But I would now ask Olga if she could please invite James onto the stage, and we'll have our next discussion. Hello, James. James, a writer, a performer, and a community activist, as well as a granddad, of course. We want to know all about all of that. But first, can I ask you the same question as I asked Dan, which is, tell us how you came upon Toastmasters and what attracted you to join it in the first place.
Well, thank you, Gillian, and thank both yourself and Olga for this kind invitation. A little bit like Dan, I fell into Toastmasters a little sideways, in as much that a mutual friend, Anthony Garvey, had been badgering me to come along to a meeting. And eventually one Monday evening, I had no more excuses to give. I ended up going. And it happened to be an evening where they were showing the World Championship from 2019. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like Dan just said, I just thoroughly enjoyed it. And I was given a very warm welcome. And I wasn't press ganged into it, nor was I walked to the cash machine. But there were an awful lot of people standing between me and the door. So I felt morally obliged to join up.
Very good. I know that you're certainly involved in a lot of voluntary and interesting community activities. But do you think has your willingness to take on roles within Toastmasters enriched your contribution to all of those other activities, or changed your experience?
That's an excellent question, and one that I think about often. It's a bit of a chicken and an egg situation, in as much that what I've learned in Toastmasters is that no one's going to die if you stand up and talk. And likewise, my experiences outside Toastmasters have given a little bit of nuance and colour to what I hope I contribute to both the club, the area, the division, and the district. So it's, as I say, it's a chicken and egg. I think the wonderful thing about Toastmasters is that you do get this supportive environment to try things out and to try a different approach. And I think, like with all team events, and everything is a team, if you have a supportive background and if you have a supportive atmosphere, you're encouraged to take part and to take that chance.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. You're in a safe space for experimenting and practicing a lot of different skills. Now we did, when we spoke before, as we always do these events, we had a discussion before. You talked about various things such as TEDx Tralee, and also perhaps a budding radio career. Maybe. Would you like to share just some of the things that perhaps Toastmasters has helped you to achieve?
Well, first of all, let me use the usual quote that people say about radio, in that I have a face for radio, as the viewers can tell right now. What I love about local radio is that if you go and say, I want to advertise Toastmasters, local radio have to make a living, and they will charge you a fortune to advertise. But local radio also needs a vox pop. They need someone who can come in and talk about a variety of topics and subjects in hopefully a coherent and entertaining manner. And I find that the table topics, the impromptu speaking experience of Toastmasters is very good for that kind of thing. And what they tend to say then at the end of the event is, and James is a member of the local Toastmasters, or he's former president of the local Toastmasters club. So you get that kind of soft sell. So there's an awful lot of opportunities come out of that. With regard to TEDx Tralee, a friend of mine whom I work with a lot on local festivals, and be they local festivals, regional festivals, national or international festivals, the principles remain the same, in that you have to get organized, you have to get structured, the same way as you've described your work with Olga to get tonight's event going. You do a fair bit of prep work. But I said one day to my friend Brian, I said, why don't we do TEDx Tralee? And he went quiet, which is normally a bad sign, which means that it's not totally off the wall, and that there's a gem of an idea there. And we have done 3 TEDx Tralees in 2021, 2022, and last October. And to date, these talks that can be on a myriad and a variety of topics have been viewed online by nearly 2 million people, which for a small town on the edge of Ireland, if you miss Tralee, the next stop is America. So it's an opportunity there to promote the locality, to promote the country, to promote the region, and what is available. So the skills are much the same. The emphasis might be slightly different, but TEDx Tralee has been a success, a phenomenal success, really. And also opportunities on local radio, local media. And of course, radio is a wonderful thing. Like this broadcast, you never know who's going to be listening. And I found that I've got opportunities to appear on the BBC. Yes, viewers, I'm afraid that's where your license fee has gone on. BBC, stations in America, stations in Australia, all over the place. And all you have to do is just talk articulately and hopefully entertainingly for 5 to 10 minutes. Not totally dissimilar to a Toastmaster speech.
Great, James. I think if the organisers of the Rose of Tralee are watching and they're looking for a replacement for Dahi O'Shea, James Finnegan, you're the man for the job. Thank you so much for your contribution. And again, we'll see you a little later on the stage for our group discussion. Thank you, James.
Thank you,
and Olga, if you could bring Lydia onto the stage, please, so that I can, that's quick. Fantastic. Lydia is our third panelist, and she has been very busy over the last couple of years setting up her own business, confidence coaching business. So you've made the change from being an employee to being the boss. And we are so grateful, Lydia, that you have had the time to come here to be part of this discussion. Now, again, by way of proper introduction, could I ask you the same initial question? tell us when you discovered Toastmasters and what was your motivation to join?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all, Gillian. I'm very pleased to be here. My first experience of Toastmasters was, well, I didn't know what Toastmasters was initially, like most of us. I wanted to improve my public speaking, just like many people do who come along to a Toastmasters meeting. But I saw an ad on, I think it was the Meetup site, and it basically said, if you want to improve your public speaking, come along to this meeting. I wanted to do that. So I went along to the Speakers of Croydon Club in Croydon, and I was immediately blown away by the warm welcome, first of all, that I had. And then just sitting down and listening to all the speakers that came to the stage, all the role holders, that the Toastmaster and everybody that had to come up, they just seemed to be so brilliant at what they were doing. And I sat there thinking I could never do that because I had such a massive fear of public speaking. I was just in awe of these people. But what really brought me to kind of become a member was really the energy that I got from being in that environment. As I said, there's such a warm welcome and the environment of support. So having gone to my first meeting, I joined the club. And then from there, I've just been on that experience. I joined back in 2015, and sort of 3 months into joining, I was encouraged to enter the humorous speech contest. And that really, really pushed me out of my comfort zone. But what it also did was it helped me to speed up the process of improving my speaking skills. I was so delighted to have won my club contest. I don't even know how that happened, but I did. And then I went to the area and came second. And it was just such an experience that I didn't know that I would be having in that short period of time, but it just kind of opened up my belief about what was possible. So that's how I first found out about Toastmasters, and I'm here so many years later.
That is a great tip for VPEs across the land and across the world. Get your new members in to enter the humorous speech contest. It's a great way of a bit of fun and a way to introduce you to the club and to get a confidence boost for getting up there, whether you win or not. I think it gives you a confidence boost, which is brilliant. So you've made this huge change in your life in setting up your own confidence coaching business. Is there an aspect of Toastmasters you think that really helped you in that journey? The public speaking or the leadership, or there's many aspects that we learn in Toastmasters. What would you put as your top reason, your top influence for that?
I think that there's elements of both. So the speaking side of things, as well as being involved in the leadership side of things. So for speaking, I would say that has helped me to be able to pitch myself when I'm going to sort of put myself forward for tenders and things like that. Not even just in the speaking to the directors, it's actually also in the writing as well. So when I've been writing a tender document, I've actually been using the skills that I've learned in Toastmasters. So the beginning, middle, end, thinking about the audience. What is the audience getting? Like, am I really, is the information I'm putting down on paper actually helping the reader? Is it what they want to hear? And it's kind of in the back of your mind, but I definitely know that writing speeches, getting the evaluations from speeches, that entire journey has definitely helped me in that element. And obviously my confidence has grown to be able to even put myself forward to do things like that as well. And then in terms of the leadership side of things, I have been on the committee at my club, secretary, VPPR, and most recently as president. And I really didn't want to be president for my club. I was encouraged, maybe even voluntold. That is a word we use in our club quite a lot. But I became president, and when I was in that role, I didn't know what doors it was going to open up for me. But definitely being able to be a club president, manage a team, but also have to stand up at every single meeting, open and close that meeting, find some relevant content to share with your audience. Doing that over the weeks just became easier. At the beginning, you kind of feel like, oh, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to say? But then sort of towards the middle and the end of your sort of presidency, you're able to just think on your feet and be able to deliver an opening remark and closing, and do so without really thinking about it much. And having that experience has basically helped me to now be able to coach other people on how to be better public speakers as well.
That's great, Lydia. Thank you very much. It's very interesting how both yourself and James have taken so much from the leadership part of Toastmasters out into the outside world, for yourself in your career and for James in his community work. Have you continued to enter speech contests, maybe to bring it back around to another aspect of Toastmasters? Do you continue to enter speech contests? Is that something you enjoy?
I haven't entered a speech contest in a little while. I have since entered contests, but I have been involved in the organisation quite a lot. So I've been sort of contest chairs quite a few times, and taken on other roles. So I haven't done so recently, but it is sort of on my list, to put myself forward for contests again soon. It is a really, really good experience.
It's a really good experience, but it can be difficult to get to do it if you're being asked, because you've done a great job in the past. if you're being asked to take part in the organizing and the judging, but it's good to take that opportunity, I think, to have a bit of fun and enter a speech contest sometime in the near future. So again, thank you very much for your contribution, Lydia, and we will see you again in a few minutes when we have our group discussion. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Now, so Olga, our next speaker is already up. I don't even have to ask. And here we have our final panelist from East Galway Speakers. You're the VPE of East Galway Speakers at the moment and president of Pride Toastmasters Club. A man, and I don't know if you remember this, Rob, but a man who has listed his occupation on Easy Speak as superhero.
No, I don't remember that at all.
Also, it's there in black and white. Also, a past both area and division director, and I believe you're area director this year as well. Rob has embraced leadership in many spheres. So Rob, you bring a different perspective to this discussion about Toastmasters for everyone, and I look forward to hearing your advice on how we can make that happen. But again, firstly, Rob, if you could fill us in when you became involved in Toastmasters and what made you gravitate towards it at first.
So I was taken to my first meeting by a friend of mine who had been talking about this thing called Toastmasters, and it sounded really interesting. So I went along with him one night just as a guest, and I just found it very welcoming. But I'm kind of the anomaly. There's one member who gives this great speech about why people join Toastmasters. She does it at open nights to try and encourage guests. And she talks about how people come along to improve their public speaking. And I didn't. I joined because I saw the leadership side of things, and I saw how well meetings were being run, how professional and how organized it was. And that's what I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn leadership skills because I felt my confidence to speak in front of people was already fine. I didn't have nerves of speaking in front of people. So I went along to learn these leadership skills and ended up learning so much more. It's only through taking part in the meetings and taking on the different roles and doing the speeches that I discovered, okay, so I don't have the nerves when it comes to standing in front of people, but I actually don't know how to write a speech, because every time I speak in front of people, it was from a script someone had given me. So I didn't need to think, whereas now I do. So the skills that I've learned through that, and with the topics learning impromptu speaking, those were the reasons why I stayed, because I suddenly realized I was learning much more than leadership, and it drew me in, and I think it's benefited me immeasurably.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rob. Thank you very much for that. Now, inclusivity is a word that when we spoke about this event a couple of weeks ago was very much your focus, inclusivity in Toastmasters clubs. So what does inclusivity look like to you?
To me, it's about breaking down barriers. There are hundreds and thousands of barriers put in front of every single person every day for any number of reasons. And to me, inclusivity is about breaking down those barriers. It's about making things accessible for everybody, no matter what. For example, you talked about closed captions. And setting this up, you have given people two options. They can watch on YouTube, or they can head over to LinkedIn and have the closed captions on. And I speak as someone who wears hearing aids and who is quite deaf without them, that to have that facility is great. That's inclusivity. That's making it accessible for people who may have issues with their hearing. But it goes beyond just that one issue. There's lots of different things that we as club members can do, and as clubs that we can do to make our areas and our club meetings more accessible for everyone. And it includes everything. It's not just about disabilities. We're looking at all sorts of disabilities, but we're also looking at neurodiversity, gender, the works. There's so many different topics that we could explore. We don't have the time tonight to go through all of them, but there is so many different topics we can explore to make our meetings far more inclusive. They're already very inclusive. As part of this, I spoke to a couple of members and in different clubs, and I just said, look, if you were being asked this question, what would you say? And I was proud to hear that every single one of them said, well, I already think it's quite inclusive. Every single one of them started with that. No one said, well, instantly, no one said, well, there's this, and this. They all said how welcoming and how inclusive they found Toastmasters anyway. But just like with an evaluation, there's always something we can find to improve on.
Absolutely, absolutely. Most clubs, I think, are very mindful of the need to host meetings in venues that are what we call accessible, but that's very often mobility ability focused.
Yeah.
So is there a ramp? Is there a lift? Is there the right restroom facilities for wheelchair users? But there are so many different things that you can do to make meetings accessible to people with different types of needs. And I know that you are going to be hosting a workshop in the District 71 conference next year in Solihull. So
fingers crossed. It's not confirmed yet, but fingers crossed.
Sorry, maybe I've outed that now. We certainly look forward to that. Should it happen? But in brief, though, is there any advice you would give to Toastmasters clubs? Simple and immediately impactful advice to make meetings more accessible to people with different types of disabilities. Now, of course, that's a huge topic, but any headline items you'd like to raise?
So Toastmasters likes things in threes. So I can give you 3 words that will help any club meeting. Ask, listen, learn.
Yes.
If someone comes along and they have a particular disability or they have a particular accessibility issue, ask them how you can help, learn from them, and listen to them when they tell you what they need. Because I don't know anyone who doesn't appreciate being asked, what can we do to make this accessible for you? So regardless of all the things we'll talk about shortly, if you just do those 3 things, you will go so far, because the small changes that you'll be asked to make will literally be that. They will be tiny changes. It might be, if you get someone who's like myself, who's hearing impaired, they might ask if they could put a listening device up by the speaker. So it's not something that's going to get in the way of anybody. And these are just small changes that you can make. So that would be my main piece of advice. Ask, listen, and learn.
That's great advice, to ask the person who needs the facility what they need, really is the critical thing.
It's all well and good someone saying they're an expert or someone saying they know what to do, but we're all individuals and we all know what help we would require and what we would like to see done. So, as I said, ask, listen, and learn.
Very good, and our individual preferences. Now, you've recently started a Toastmaster club called Pride Toastmasters. Would you like to go into that? I'm not sure if it's an online club or an in-person club.
It will be fully online. We will meet once a year, kind of like a mini conference, just as a get-together of members. We are pre-charter at the moment. We have our first demo meeting coming up in January. It's an inclusive club, but it's LGBT themed. So it's not that all the speeches have to be LGBT, but the whole theme of the club will be based around the LGBTI plus community to make it absolutely welcoming, because people talk about safe spaces and needing safe spaces. We have members. I know of a member who's in a club down south who's not out at all, but I know them from a different work. They're not out to their family, they're not out to their club members or anything like that. And this club is for people to come along and just be themselves without any kind of judgment, without any fear. And hopefully, once they've experienced that and they've seen what Toastmasters can get from this, they'll feel more comfortable going along to an in-person, to a community club. So it's, as I said, we're still in the pre-charter status at the moment, but we're getting there. We're getting the numbers slowly.
Right. So immediate goals are getting the numbers and getting up to chartered status. Very good. Excellent. And yes, well, thank you very much for your contribution, Rob. And we will be seeing you. In fact, we'll be inviting everybody else back up on the stage now. So you don't need to go anywhere for our group discussions. Now, do we have everybody back? Excellent. Thanks, everyone. And thank you for your patience. And I suppose, let me throw out just a couple of questions, and then I'd be absolutely delighted if anybody wants to come in with perhaps an added comment based on what you've heard your other contributors saying this evening on any of the topics that we have discussed. So the first one is probably, Rob, you may have something else to contribute, but I think you've already spoken on this, but others may have an opinion on it. And it is, what do you think is the most important thing or the most immediately impactful thing you can do in your Toastmasters club to foster inclusivity? And I mean inclusivity in that broad sense, as Rob described, that it's about welcoming everybody. And Rob, of course, if there's anything you want to add, you can come back. Oh, James is, you have the stage.
Thank you, Gillian. I always remember a young lad who I'm going to call David, which is not his real name. But David came along as a guest to meetings and said nothing for several meetings. Even at the coffee break, he wouldn't engage. And it became obvious that the reason for his reluctance was that he had a pronounced stutter. But when he got to know the group and when he felt more comfortable, he eventually answered a table topic, which doesn't sound a big thing, but to him was a major thing, and he was rightly applauded. He will never enter a contest, he will never win a contest, but because of that bit of supportive environment and encouragement, he is now embarked on a course in the local community college. He's now progressing his own personal education, and that's all because of a supportive environment in the club, where he got the encouragement and support to actually get up and participate. Not terribly dramatic, but for him, it was life-changing.
So a great success story for that individual, James, which is, and it's wonderful to hear about a club that creates that kind of environment where that's possible, where people feel supported. Would anybody else like to come in on that particular question? Oh, Dan, there you go.
Yeah, I think Rob said it, but I think Toastmasters is naturally just seems to be so good at this kind of thing anyway. It really is, and maybe that's because everyone who comes to Toastmasters, or certainly a huge percentage of people who come, come with their own difficulty in some way. And so maybe because of that, we've kind of nurtured this community that is really good with it. And just from the contest point of view, I just wanted to kind of highlight that this year we had a world champion who became world champion delivering her speeches from a wheelchair, and I was in the semi-final with Luisa Montalvo, who became the world champion, and I was around obviously the whole setup for her and how she had the ramp to get up onto the stage and how everything would work, and it was so impressive how everything had been thought of. And it had been thought of not just about making sure that she was comfortable and that everything was good for her, but also that we as the other contestants were comfortable and didn't feel like, there's treatment she's getting that might help her. It was so kind of inclusive of all of us. But the thing that impressed me most, and James kind of mentioned this, where he said that the person with the stutter would never win a contest, and that might be so. I know people have different difficulties. But there's a point on the judges' score sheet for the international contest, and I think all of the contests around use of the stage. And I remember thinking, well, how will that work with Luisa? Because she's going to be sitting in her wheelchair, and I knew she wasn't planning to move the wheelchair around the stage, and so how will she get her points there? And will the judges appreciate that things are a bit different for her? And obviously they did, because she won. But I think there was a moment in her semi-final speech, if you go and watch it, where she talks about why she's in the wheelchair, and then she actually climbs up at one point out of the wheelchair. And even though that was the only use of the stage she did in the entire speech, getting out of that wheelchair, it was more than any of the rest of us did by moving all around the stage. And I just thought that judges can sit in an audience and they can appreciate that. They can appreciate that what she did there was more than the rest of us did. I think that it's just so impressive, and you might not get that in other areas, other competitions where people might be separated off because, oh no, well, you won't be able to use the stage, so you'll have to have your own competition. Just that we as Toastmasters can be that inclusive, I think is really good. Sorry, I've taken up lots of time.
No, that was fabulous. Thank you very much, Dan. Anybody else would like to come in on that particular question?
Well, I would just say I agree with what everyone has said here, and Toastmasters generally is a welcoming environment, but just to maintain that throughout the journey of your members, it's not just when someone walks through the door, but it's also, keeping in touch with your members and, making sure that they have the things that they need. And I just think in everything that we do as Toastmasters in life, we have values. Toastmasters has a set of values. And if we are working towards those values of respect, integrity, service, and excellence, we are embodying what, for me, inclusivity means. Just allowing everybody to make the most of Toastmasters in a way that is the best for them.
It's a really excellent point. And I think, Dan, what you touched on as well is really interesting. Yes, I think most Toastmasters and most Toastmasters clubs, there's a degree of empathy that people have because we all join Toastmasters for very different reasons, or at least a collection of different reasons spread across the population of Toastmasters. And we even have it covered here tonight. We have certainly myself, perhaps Dan and Lydia, who really did not like public speaking, and we joined to master that fear. And we have Rob, who was a confident speaker, but needed the skills. And I know Toastmasters like that who are just fantastic speakers, but need the skills of timing and speech writing and getting to the point and, getting your point across in a particular amount of time. So we all have different reasons for joining, and we have to be equally respectful of everyone's goals in their particular journey. Now, I'd just like to remind the audience, we do have a few viewers there who've sent in comments, and I haven't shared them all because I don't necessarily catch them at the right time for the right comment. But if you do have questions, please, now is the time to send in the question. I have a tough question now for my panelists. We've talked this evening about just the value and the benefits that volunteering for leadership in Toastmasters can give you. but yet it can still be very difficult to encourage members to step up to the leadership roles. So I'd like to put that question to everyone. Is there something we can do to demonstrate or to show by example, perhaps, or any other method of trying to encourage our colleagues in Toastmasters to take on leadership roles within the club and further afield? So would anybody like to be the first to take that one on? Rob, very good. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, I appreciate how difficult it can be to get members, especially newer members, to step up and take a role on the committee, because they hear the word committee and instantly panic. They think it's a weekly meeting they have to attend, that they are in charge of the entire club, and if anything goes wrong, it's going to come down on them. And I think what would be beneficial was if you had certain members take on a shadowing aspect of a role. So if you'd got someone who had maybe thought about VPE or didn't know what the VPE did, then get them to shadow them for a couple of weeks, anytime throughout the year, and let them see just exactly what the VPE does and what the VPM does and what all the different roles do within a committee. I also think it's no harm to make committee meetings open and public. I know a lot of clubs still hold their committee meetings on Zoom. So why not open it up to all your members to attend and see exactly what it is you do and exactly what it is we talk about? Because I have to say, every committee I've been on, every committee meeting, there is an aspect of fun to it. We have a laugh trying to organise things and come up with ideas for the club. And I think if people could see the enjoyment aspect of it, that might take away that bit of fear about having to take on a leadership role. But shadowing, I think, would absolutely help, rather than just shadowing those that are going to be elected into the roles. Let other people shadow as well to see how the role actually works and what's done behind the scenes.
Very good. Thanks, Rob. Anybody else like to come in on that? Lydia?
Thank you. I think that, like, totally agree. I love those ideas, Rob. But I think for clubs, sometimes we don't maybe talk about the leadership roles as much as we could do, other than when we're coming up to election time, when you kind of want people to take on the roles and then you're asking them to do it. But I feel that if we can think about almost promoting each of the roles or what we do in those roles throughout the year. So if it's like a mini educational at various meetings, or maybe a drop-in session if people have questions, not just in the run-up to election, but as something you do throughout the year, I think that would be a good way of encouraging people, because they get to understand what each of the roles involve earlier in the year, rather than towards the end when we're trying to get those roles filled.
Very good. Would anybody else? I do see a question from Elizabeth Jordan here, so I might share that, but do feel free to continue with that topic if you prefer. I'm going to show a question here from Elizabeth about taking Toastmasters out into the community. Now we have touched on, I suppose, how it has enriched some members' lives in terms of being out in the community. But I don't know if anybody would like to speak further on. Yes. Oh, we have two. Will I go to James first and then I'll go to Lydia? James.
Thank you, Gillian, and thank you, Elizabeth, for the question. I am of the firm belief that until Toastmasters gets out into the community, we will not develop and we will not get new membership. The days of the community coming into us, I think, are gone. But when you are seen to be involved in the community, be it in a voluntary capacity, be it in a charitable capacity, or even just being actively active in the community, that is an example of what you can do. And it's also touches slightly back to your question, is how do we demonstrate the virtues of what Toastmasters has to offer? Because the number of times I said, well, where did he come from? Where did she come from? Oh, she's a Toastmaster. Again, it's that subtle introduction of the ethos into the community. If I had a magic wand, I would make every member wear their lapel badge, because that encourages the question, what is Toastmasters? What does it do? Because, as we have all said in our different ways, when we came into Toastmasters, we didn't know what we were coming into. And I would add the substance to that is that what people know about Toastmasters tends to be wrong. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, James. Lydia, would you like to? We're running slightly over, but I think we should finish at least this topic before we say goodbye. So, Lydia, would you like to take that as well?
Okay, just quickly, I would say, Elizabeth, that there are events called open houses that can be held by Toastmasters clubs, where you can invite the community to come in and almost see a mini meeting, but actually get them involved. And we hosted an area open house a couple of years ago. So all of the clubs in area H15 came together and hosted a community event. And I think, I can't remember the numbers, but we had maybe like 50, 60 people subscribed to attend the event. Obviously less showed up, but there was such a great energy in the room. We were able to talk about Toastmasters, and we were able to follow up with them, everybody that attended afterwards. If they want to become members, they can, but equally it may not be right for them right now. In the future, it may be something they want to do. But either way, they just have a great time in a great environment for one evening. So open houses are great to integrate into the community as well.
It's a fantastic idea. I know our club do have library meetings where we host a meeting on a Saturday in the public library to try to capture people who maybe would be busy on a Thursday evening, but just to get them in to experience Toastmasters. But an area where you can actually get a large group of people is really a very interesting idea. So thank you very much for that suggestion. Well, it's now just gone 8:30. So it just remains for me to thank all of our contributors this evening. Thank you all for turning on the live stream, to all those in the audience, and for your comments during the session. And a huge thank you to Olga Byrne for making all of this happen. And I hope that you've taken away two things tonight. The first is that Toastmasters is for just about everyone, whether you want to improve your communication skills, your leadership skills, your public speaking, but also Toastmasters should be for everyone. And I hope clubs will also take note of the small steps that we should all be taking to encourage everyone to be accommodated and welcomed in our clubs. So with that, I will say good night, everyone, and thank you very much for watching.